All right. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Board of Directors meeting for the Kingdom of Northreach. The date is October 15th, 2017, and it is 8:05 p.m. I'm going to call the meeting to order. Okay. Let's see. Who is here? So I got Austin, Jonathan, Lucian, and myself. So we're missing. Who are we missing?
Rowan and Hadland.
Rowan and Hadland, that's it? Okay. Let me fix that real quick. Oh, I think I hear Hadland. Okay. All right. Hopefully everybody's had a chance to look at the agenda. The first thing we need to do is make sure that everything on the previous agenda is correct. So I've got notes on there as far as what the votes were. Is there anybody that sees any issues or errors on that? Okay, then hearing none, I motion to approve the meeting minutes for the meeting of August 16th, 2017.
I'll second that.
Okay, thank you. Is anybody opposed to that motion? Okay, motion carries unanimously. All right, sweet. We're gonna table the bank account status review until the Secretary Treasurer joins us. We're also going to table her report. Oh, no, wait a minute. No, that's a proposal. I'm sorry, I read that wrong. All right. Is there anybody that has not read the Secretary's report proposal? Okay. Does anybody feel that we need to discuss it?
I was just curious, how do you record lost members? Is that just everyone who's shown up and doesn't show up again?
So,
I feel like we need to clearly define that.
Essentially, well, it is defined. It would be defined as anyone that has previously been a member that hasn't shown up in the last 60 days. Although we could redefine lost member however we wanted to, but as King, that's something that I'm super interested in keeping track of, is how many people do we have that were showing up that are now not showing up, because we should follow up with those folks.
It also shows
that an org report can be generated to get that information very easily.
It's also helpful to know, like, if your problem's like retention or if it's recruitment.
Exactly. If we've got 20 new members and 25 lost members, we want to look at that, right? And it gives us some somewhere to really focus on that for recruitment and retention. So yeah, does that answer your question, James? Okay. Let's see. In that case, I motion to impose the Secretary Treasurer report as described in the proposal.
I second that motion.
All right. Are there any opposed? Okay, motion carries unanimously. All right. Okay, so now we've got the gigantic bylaws clarification section here. Some general background and intention was requested, so I'm going to go into that real quick, and then if there's any questions or discussion before we start voting, then we can do that. This is being proposed simply because there was some concern expressed from one of our members that we weren't following our bylaws, and there was a discussion about it. And rather than rather than argue about something, I decided to bring it to the board for review. So essentially, what the point of contention is that there are a couple of terms in our bylaws that aren't clearly defined. Those terms being general members and voting members. So every section where those terms were used in a manner where it was not clearly defined what it meant, I've added that to the proposal, along with the precedent of how the organization has defined or interpreted that section throughout its history, as well as some background from the Corpora Committee as far as how those discussions and essentially what the rules as intended were supposed to be for that section. And I figured I would bring it to the board to get sort of an official clarification for us to use right now while we sort of put together a plan for drafting corpora revisions for the future. Because even if we wanted to revise these officially and go through the ratification process, we would need some sort of interpretation to use in the meantime, which is what we want to do now. Ultimately, I would like to set up a regular process for corpora updates, and I'd like them to be less frequent than, no more frequent than twice a year. I think any more than that becomes burdensome. So, unless there's an emergency or something, I guess. So the idea is that we as a board would go through and decide how we want to handle these particular gray areas going forward, and then put together a process for how we want to formally update the corpora in the future. Any questions or points of discussion?
Yeah, ultimately, I feel like our corpora needs to be changed, or our bylaws should be changed by sending it to the populace. But this is the precedent we've had for a while, and it's vague enough that we can kind of continue to operate that way. I don't like gray areas, but we definitely should clean it up eventually.
No argument here, and I'd like to do that before the end of this term for your guys' term, so before February. I'd like to have a corpora amendment process put together. So that would probably look like getting a new corpora committee assembled, having them collect issues or points of clarification, or even grammatical errors, whatever, that needs to be updated, and then potentially looking at an updated corpora to be ratified in January, February timeframe. So that's sort of the idea. I have zero argument with the fact that it's vague. They're terms that are undefined. I feel like our precedent is pretty solid. Like, we've never really interpreted it in more than one way. But if somebody were to come in fresh and not have the benefit of that precedent, it's definitely vague. So we can clean that up, I think. Anybody else have any thoughts or discussion points on that? Okay. Hearing none, then I'd like to motion. I don't want a motion for every single one of these. I'd like to put a motion that we vote on each one of these sections individually, and then move forward.
Oh, I second that motion.
Okay, let me make a note here. All right. I'm assuming everybody's read these, and so if there's, I'm just going to call out the section numbers if that's okay with everybody. I don't hear any dissent. So, is anyone opposed to the change or the clarification for section 2.6.3? And motion carries. Is anybody opposed to the clarification for section 2.7.3? The motion carries. Anyone opposed to the clarification for sections 3.1.1 through 3.1.4? Okay. Motion carries. 3.1. Is anybody opposed to the clarification for section 3.1.10? All right, motion carries. The clarification for section 4.2.1. Motion carries. The clarification for section 4.2.2. Motion carries. Clarification for section 4.2.3. Motion carries. Clarification for section 4.2.5. Motion carries. The clarification for section 4.2.6. Motion carries. Clarification for section 4.2.7. Motion carries. Clarification for section 4.2.10. Motion carries. Clarification for section 5.1.4. Motion carries. The clarification for section 8.2.1. Motion carries. Clarification for section 8.3.2. Motion carries. The clarification for section 8.4.2. Motion carries. And lastly, the clarification for section 10.1.1. Okay, motion carried. So all motions carried. I'll have those clarifications posted somewhere near the corpora. I'll have Hadelin put it together and then get it to James so he can post it to the website. Anything on that topic that anybody else would like to discuss?
Before we move on,
Yes, sir.
as far as putting together a corpora committee to essentially collect whatever clarifications, grammatical errors, or changes need to be made to the committee, presumably at the end of each reign, is putting that team together. Is that something that we can make official now? And then, like, I don't expect us to pick out a team because that's kind of impractical. But is there a as like an official thing in Northridge to have a ongoing corpora update committee, or is that something that'll have to be on a per reign basis? I'm not sure if I'm being clear.
It would be on a per reign basis until we actually add it to the bylaws or to the admin manual. But since I will be in office hopefully for the next 10 months, I'm happy to extend that throughout my term. And then if we want to put something more official in during that time, I would absolutely support that. I think it's a process that we need, and I don't have any objection to that. I think as far as forming the committee goes, though, I think that's something that the Council of Crowns can handle, because all they're doing is gathering information and then submitting it to the board, which is fine. So we can talk about that in the COC meeting if that's acceptable. James, is that okay with you?
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. Okay, so we're going to go back up to our tabled items. Our tabled item, excuse me, the bank account status review. So I will turn that over to Hadeland.
Okay. At this point in time, I have an appointment next week on Tuesday to meet with the Denali Credit Union business representative. I can't open these accounts at any of their, the branches in the grocery stores that are open after work hours. I have to go down to the business office on 36th. So I have an appointment on Tuesday to get that ball rolling. The initial accounts have to be opened in person, and then after that, we can take care of everything via electronic signature. And at this point in time, we would start the local prime ministers who are elected for the coming term with access to the Denali accounts and not the Alaska USA accounts. And the funds would be transferred from the Alaska USA accounts to the Denali accounts. So just to clarify, to make sure everybody understands, on Tuesday I will open the accounts, but the new prime ministers won't have access to them on Tuesday. That's just the initial creation. And then from there, we should be able to add them electronically. So we'll start that process at that point in time.
Any questions for the secretary? Okay. Thank you, Hadeland.
You're welcome.
Is there anything else that needs to be brought before the board of directors? Okay, hearing none, I motion to adjourn at 8:21 p.m.
I'll second that.
Okay, anyone opposed? Okay, then 8:21 p.m. we are adjourned. Thank you, board, for your time.
I have a procedural question, not for the board.
We're still live.
Yeah, James, we can go ahead and stop the recording now.